Start with the thing that doesn't fit, because everything about this story looks, on the surface, like a happy ending. And then you notice who was in the room and who wasn't, and suddenly it stops looking like an ending at all. On Friday, at Highgrove House in Gloucestershire, King Charles finally did the thing he has reportedly wanted to do for over a year. He saw his grandchildren. Archie, 7 years old, Lilibet, 5, two children who had not set foot in the United Kingdom since June 2022, when they were tiny, for the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Charles, 77, 2 years into a cancer battle he has never fully described in public, sat in a room with them for the first time since they were barely more than babies. That's real. That's confirmed. ABC News confirmed it 2 days ago. Hello confirmed the location. This happened. And it should be the warmest royal story of the year. So why does it feel like something is off? Here's the first detail, the one that quietly changes everything. Charles didn't host this reunion alone. He hosted it with Camilla. The Queen was in the room. And if you followed this saga for even 5 minutes, you know exactly why that single fact carries a charge the palace would prefer you didn't think about too hard. Because Harry has spent years telling anyone who would listen that Camilla is the problem. Not a problem, the problem. Let me remind you just how deep that goes, because it's easy to forget how personal it got.
In his 60 Minutes interview promoting Spare, Harry implied Camilla had been feeding negative stories about him to the British press in exchange for favorable coverage of herself, effectively accusing his stepmother of trading his reputation to rehabilitate her own. He described her in that same press run as dangerous, someone with, in his words, a need to rehabilitate her image that made anyone in her way collateral damage. Royal author Tom Bower, in his book Betrayal, claimed Camilla had told a friend that Meghan had brainwashed Harry, a claim Harry and Meghan publicly dismissed as deranged conspiracy. And in the months leading up to this very trip, reporting from multiple outlets claimed Harry was convinced Camilla was constantly poisoning Charles against him, positioning herself as the gatekeeper who decided whether Harry got through to his own father. One report claimed she called his planned visit a huge mistake and vowed to make it as miserable as she could make it. That is the woman who was sitting at the table on Friday when Harry's children met their grandfather. Hold the image for a second. The man who has spent 3 years telling the world that Camilla blocked him, poisoned his father, and traded his name to the tabloids, brought his kids into her house and let her be part of the exact moment he'd been waiting years for.
Either something has shifted that nobody is telling us about, or Harry wanted his father so badly that he was willing to sit across from the person he blames for everything and pretend for one afternoon that none of it happened. Neither of those is a small thing. And the fact that the palace won't say which one it is, that's the first crack in the happy story. Now the second detail, and this is the one that turns the whole picture cold. William wasn't there. Harry was in the country. He'd been in Birmingham that same week for the Invictus Games countdown event. Confirmed, photographed, wheelchair rugby, the whole thing. On July 10th, he was on British soil. His brother was on British soil. And they did not meet. It is not believed, in the careful language every outlet is using, that William and Harry saw each other at all. Think about what that means in the context of what just happened. Charles was willing to cross the biggest bridge of all, bring the estranged son, the California family, the wife he reportedly doesn't trust, into his home and sit with the grandchildren. Charles did the hard thing. And William didn't even do the small thing. Didn't show up, didn't make an appearance, wasn't in the building. And we know why. Because it's been leaking out of Kensington Palace for weeks. William feels betrayed. That's the word that keeps coming back. Not angry, not frustrated. Betrayed. Sources say just hearing Meghan's name can set him off.
Royal author Tom Sykes wrote that William has told friends he believes Harry should be exiled as far away as possible. And this is the line that stopped everyone, that William blames the stress of Harry and Meghan's departure for aggravating Kate's cancer. Sit with that. He connects his brother's choices to his wife's illness. That is not a wound that closes because Dad decided to host a lunch. And it goes further. The reporting this week claimed William won't even let Kate near Harry. That Kate, who by every account has always had a softer spot for Harry, who was reportedly running a quiet peace campaign of her own, hoping to get him alone for a heart-to-heart, has been told by her own husband to stay away. One insider said it plainly. She'd hoped to talk sense into Harry, to encourage him to apologize to William. But that won't happen now, not with Meghan watching over. So when the reunion finally happened, the heir to the throne was the conspicuous empty chair. The father showed up. The brother stayed away, and kept his wife away too. And that gap tells you more about where this family actually stands than any statement ever could. Then the third detail, and this is the one I keep circling back to. Not one photograph. No pictures, no details, no official word. Buckingham Palace hasn't commented. The Sussex's spokesperson hasn't commented.
A meeting that, by any normal royal logic, should have been the feel-good image of the year. A sick grandfather finally holding his grandchildren after 4 years apart, produced complete, total, deafening silence. Now sit with why that's strange. Because the royal family knows exactly how to use a photograph. When they want warmth, they release warmth. A single image of Charles with Archie and Lilibet on the lawn at Highgrove would have gone around the world in an hour. It would have said, the family is healing. The king is well enough to be a grandfather. The door is open. That photo would have done more for the monarchy's image than 100 press releases. And they chose not to release it. Why would you not release the one image everyone wants? Here's the honest read, and I'll give you both sides because both are real. The generous version. This was genuinely private. Charles wanted a real moment with his grandchildren. Not a photo op, not a performance, just a grandfather and 2 kids in a room without cameras. After everything this family has turned into content, the documentary, the memoir, the interviews, maybe he wanted one thing that stayed his. That's the warm interpretation, and it might be true. But here's the colder version, and it fits the other details better. You don't release a photo when you're not sure the thing in the photo is going to last. You don't put out an image of unity when unity is exactly what you can't guarantee. A photograph is a commitment. It says, this is real, this is stable, look at us. And if the palace held that photo back, it might be because nobody in that building is confident enough about what Friday actually meant to put it on the record. A private meeting can be walked back. A photograph cannot. And there's a third reason the silence makes sense, and it's the most uncomfortable one. William again. If Charles releases a glowing image of himself, Camilla, Harry, Meghan, and the grandchildren all together at Highgrove, while William sits at home having refused to be part of it, that photograph doesn't say the family is healed. It says the family is split, and here's the side that showed up. The absence in the picture would be louder than everyone in it. Maybe the safest thing for a palace trying to hold a fracturing family together was to make sure there was no picture at all. No photo, no proof of who was missing. Now, let me add the layer almost nobody is talking about, because it explains why this visit was so hard to pull off in the first place, and why it took Charles personally forcing it through. Security. This is the wall that has kept Archie and Lilibet out of Britain for 4 years. When Harry and Meghan stepped back in 2020 and moved to California, they lost their publicly funded police protection. Harry has been fighting the British government in court over it ever since, and in May 2025, he lost his final appeal. He said afterward, visibly shaken, that he couldn't see a world in which he'd bring his wife and children back to the UK without it, that he genuinely feared for their safety on British soil. That was barely a year ago. That was the stated, on-the-record reason his kids couldn't come home. So what changed? According to the reporting, Charles changed it. The king personally stepped in to oversee security and accommodation for this visit, offering the Sussexes the use of a royal residence and helping arrange the protection that made bringing the children possible at all. In other words, the single obstacle Harry said was insurmountable in May 2025 was cleared by July 2026 because his father decided to clear it. That's how badly Charles wanted this. He didn't just extend an invitation. He personally dismantled the barrier that had kept his grandchildren on another continent over what sources describe as the objections of the people closest to him. And that reframes the whole thing, doesn't it? This wasn't a family drifting gently back together. This was one man running out of time, using every lever he had left to force a door open that everyone around him wanted kept shut. Camilla reportedly angry about it, William refusing to participate, advisors by multiple accounts telling him it was a mistake, and Charles doing it anyway. Because when you're 77 and sick, the calculus changes. The institution can wait, but grandchildren can't. So let's put all the pieces on the table together, because separately they're just details, and together they're the whole story. Charles crossed every line to make this happen. Security, accommodation, hosting the family he's been warned about, personally clearing the obstacle that kept his grandchildren away, over the objections of, reportedly, both his wife and his heir. Camilla, the woman Harry has blamed for years and called dangerous, was in the room, which means either a thaw nobody's announced or a truce nobody's comfortable with. William, the future king, the brother, was absent entirely, on the same small island, unwilling to cross even the smallest distance, and keeping Kate away too. And the whole thing happened in total darkness. No image, no word, from an institution that knows better than anyone on Earth how to use a happy photograph when it actually has one. That's not the shape of a reconciliation. That's the shape of a family taking one careful, deniable, reversible step, with half its members holding back and nobody willing to commit it to the record. Here's my honest take. Friday was real, and it mattered, and I don't want to take that away from a 77-year-old man who moved heaven and earth to know his grandchildren before it's too late. That part is human, and it's good, and it's probably the most decent thing anyone in this family has done in years. But a reunion where the Queen's presence is a question mark, the heir won't attend, and the palace won't release a single frame, is not a family coming back together. It's a father getting one thing he wanted, while everything around that one thing stays exactly as broken as it was on Thursday. The children met their grandfather. That's the story the palace wants you to hold. But the story underneath, Camilla in the room she was accused of guarding, William refusing to enter it, Kate told to stay away, and a silence where the photograph should be, that's the one that tells you where this family really is. And it's a lot further from healed than Friday made it look. We'll find out what Friday actually meant by what happens next. Whether William ever gets in a room with his brother, whether Kate is allowed anywhere near him, whether there's a second visit, or whether this was the whole thing. One afternoon, then the plane back to California. Whether that photograph ever appears. But for now, the most revealing thing about the biggest royal reunion in 4 years is everything they've chosen not to show us. And in this family, what they hide has always mattered more than what they show.